Chapter 1. An Enigmatic Beginning. The Streets of London, June 1912. If one were to walk along its grey, drizzly pathways, amidst the clamour of horse-drawn carriages and the distant chatter of marketplaces, they'd be oblivious to a moment that would change the world. In the unassuming neighbourhood of Maida Vale, Alan Matheson Turing was born. The Turing family was an interesting blend of British colonial history and academia. Alan's father, Julius Matheson Turing, served in the Indian Civil Service, and his mother, Ethel Sarah Turing, was the daughter of the chief engineer of the Madras Railways. Alan and his elder brother John were raised in a household that valued intellect and service, but also one that adhered to the traditional expectations of the British middle class. Alan's early years weren't marked by profound revelations of genius, but by subtle hints. A story Ethel loved to recount was of young Alan, barely aged 2, making her laugh by picking up a spoon and declaring it a choo-choo train. It was a simple game of imagination, perhaps, but also an early sign of a mind inclined to see things differently. The young Turing was surrounded by an environment that oscillated between the rigidity of Victorian norms and the promise of the 20th century's innovations. The world was on the cusp of change, from the sinking of the Titanic to the onset of World War I. But for the Turing household, the greatest challenge lay in understanding and nurturing the unique mind of young Alan. His education began at home, tutored by his mother and a series of governesses. His inquisitiveness was evident. He'd often be found dismantling toys, much to the chagrin of his mother, not for mischief, but to understand how they worked. Alan's relationship with his brother John was one of contrast. John, the older and seemingly more grounded of the two, often found himself both protective and perplexed by his younger sibling. They played, laughed, and quarrelled as siblings do. Yet even then, there was an underlying current, an unspoken acknowledgement that Alan was different. The chapter of school would introduce Alan to a world where his differences became both a strength and an obstacle. As we delve deeper into his story, we'll discover that it's not just about the mind of a genius, but about a soul seeking understanding in a world on the brink of monumental shifts. Stay tuned as we journey through the early days of a boy who would, in time, redefine the very fabric of our understanding of computation, logic, and humanity. Chapter 2. A Boy and His Dreams. St. Michael's was a preparatory school located in the idyllic setting of the Sussex countryside. It was here, amongst the rolling green hills and brick buildings, that a young Alan Turing took his next steps into formal education. But like many prodigious minds, his journey wasn't without its hurdles. His teachers often found him both frustrating and fascinating. On one hand, Alan had an undeniable aptitude for numbers and patterns. On the other, his methods were unconventional, frequently ignoring traditional methods in favour of his own unique solutions. Mrs. Clarkson, his mathematics teacher, once commented, "Alan sees a world in numbers I can barely fathom, but he struggles to explain that world to the rest of us." This was a recurring theme in Turing's early education, a mind racing ahead while the world tried to catch up. But school wasn't just about academics for Alan. It was also where he discovered a love for long-distance running. His classmates would often see a lanky, determined Turing pushing himself along country roads, lost in thought. These runs were more than just physical exertion. They were moments of reflection and perhaps escape. As we journey onward, we'll witness the formative years of Alan Turing, the scholar, a young man standing at the precipice of greatness in a world just starting to understand the power of computation. Chapter 3. Cambridge Days. King's College, Cambridge, a bastion of learning, where centuries-old traditions met the forward march of science and thought. It was here in 1931 that Alan Turing found himself amidst a new chapter of his life. Walking along the River Cam, watching students punt, and professors engrossed in discussions, Turing was both in awe and at home. The environment was ripe for intellectual exploration. Here, ideas weren't just shared, they were debated, dissected, and reborn. Alan's prowess in mathematics didn't go unnoticed. His tutors and peers recognized his distinctive approach to problem-solving. Yet, Cambridge was more than just complex equations and theorem proofs for Turing. He was introduced to the works of luminaries like Albert Einstein, Niels Bohr, and Ludwig Wittgenstein. Their ideas on relativity, quantum mechanics, and the philosophy of language broadened his horizons. One significant influence during these years was Max Newman, a mathematics professor with a keen interest in the foundations of mathematical logic. Their discussions laid the groundwork for Turing's deeper exploration into what we now understand as theoretical computer science. But it wasn't all academia. Turing's social circle in Cambridge was eclectic. He formed connections with literary intellectuals, philosophers, and budding scientists. One notable association was with the exclusive intellectual secret society, the Apostles. The group's debates on ethics, consciousness, and the nature of knowledge further shaped Turing's worldview. Yet, as always, Alan remained something of an enigma. He was often seen cycling around Cambridge in his old sports coat, sometimes wearing a gas mask to avoid hay fever. Such eccentricities only added to the lore surrounding him. It was during this period, in 1935, that Turing encountered a problem posed by the German mathematician David Hilbert, known as the Entscheidungsproblem, or decision problem. Hilbert sought an algorithm that could determine whether any given mathematical statement could be proven. In trying to address this, Turing conceptualized a simple, hypothetical machine, a machine that could manipulate symbols based on a set of rules. This universal machine was the seed of modern computing, an abstract representation of a computer. It was revolutionary, not because it could be built, it was, after all, a theoretical construct, but because it introduced the idea of programmability and universality in computation. Alan Turing's time at Cambridge wasn't just an academic endeavor. It was a period of personal growth, of friendships formed, and of ideas that would soon echo throughout the annals of history. Ahead lay recognition, but also challenges that would test both his genius and his resilience. Chapter 4. On Computable Numbers. 1936 was a year that, in the grand tapestry of history, might seem unremarkable, but in the world of mathematics and logic, it was a pivotal moment. Alan Turing, still in his early 20s, published a paper titled On Computable Numbers with an application to the Entscheidungsproblem. This wasn't just another academic paper, it was a paradigm shift. The Turing machine, as it came to be known, was introduced to the world. A hypothetical device, it consisted of an infinite tape and a scanner that moved left or right, reading or writing symbols. Simple in its construction, yet profound in its implications. At its core, the Turing machine was a tool to address Hilbert's Entscheidungsproblem. Turing demonstrated that there were certain mathematical problems that couldn't be computed, a surprising and revolutionary concept. But beyond the immediate mathematical implications, Turing had outlined the blueprint for modern computing. The idea that a machine, given the right instructions, could compute anything computable was groundbreaking. This universality principle is at the heart of every device we use today, from smartphones to supercomputers. The reactions to Turing's work were mixed. Many were intrigued, some were baffled. The genius of his insights wasn't immediately recognized by all, but there were those who saw its potential. One such individual was Alonzo Church, an American mathematician who had independently arrived at a similar conclusion using a different method known as lambda calculus. Turing and Church's work converged, leading to what is now known as the Church-Turing thesis, a foundational principle asserting that any function computable by an algorithm can be computed by a Turing machine. This thesis didn't just unify two branches of thought, it redefined the very boundaries of computation. However, Turing's world wasn't just abstract machines and symbols. Amidst this groundbreaking work, Alan was a young man with personal challenges and ambitions. Friends, like Maurice Price, recalled long walks with Turing, where conversations would shift from the intricacies of quantum mechanics to Turing's aspirations and occasional moments of self-doubt. Turing once remarked to Price, "Do you ever wonder if what we're doing will be remembered, or will it just be symbols on a page?" Little did he know that his symbols on a page would become foundational to an entire field. Yet, the journey was just beginning. Turing's insights into the realm of computation were about to take a practical turn, leading him to the forefront of a global conflict and to the creation of devices that would change the world forever.